Okay, picture this. The bowler hat, the cane, that little mustache, the little tramp. You know him instantly, right? Makes you think of laughter. But what if I told you that same figure, so loved for comedy, was also, well, a really powerful voice for people on the margins? And a man dealing with some deep personal struggles. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the incredible life and, frankly, the very complex legacy of Charlie Chaplin. We've got biographies, film analyses, even Chaplin's own thoughts to draw on. We want to figure out how a kid from, abject poverty in London becomes this global superstar, a true pioneer in filmmaking, only to end up facing political exile. Our mission here is to unpack how his art still speaks to you generations later. We'll get into his groundbreaking film techniques, his surprisingly deep ideas, and yeah, the controversies that definitely followed his amazing career.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? Because he wasn't just performing. He was, well, an auteur. He managed to weave these really profound social insights right into his comedy. It certainly came at a high personal cost for him, but that mix is exactly what made him, timeless.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning then. Charles Spencer Chaplin, born April 16th, 1889, in London. And the poverty wasn't just like a little bit poor, it was severe. He called his childhood a continual crisis. His dad, Charles Sr., a musical singer, struggled with alcohol, wasn't really around, and died young, just 38, from cirrhosis. And his mother, Hannah, also a singer, she had a really tough time financially and then developed psychosis. She actually ended up being committed to a mental asylum when Charlie was only, 14?
It sounds absolutely brutal. I mean, he and his half-brother Sidney were sent to a workhouse twice before they were even 9 years old, and other institutions for destitute kids, too. He described it as a forlorn existence. But, those experiences, as terrible as they were, they clearly forged his resilience. You see it later, don't you, in how he portrayed the underdog, the little guy fighting back. It definitely informed his work.
It's incredible he survived it, let alone thrived.
Yeah.
And it was his mother, Hannah, despite everything, who got him into theater, right? She encouraged his talent for mimicry. Apparently his stage debut was at age 5. His mom got sick mid-performance and he stepped in, finished her song, and the crowd loved it. Imagine getting that taste of applause so young.
Oh, absolutely. That had to have been a pivotal moment. And that early stage experience, it really became the foundation for everything. By 19, he joined the Fred Carnot Company. They were known for pantomime, slapstick, really physical comedy. They toured the U.S., and that was his training ground, as he called it, perfecting how to act, how to be expressive without needing words at all.
So from those music halls and vaudeville stages, he gets scouted for films in America, lands at Keystone Studios in 1914. And you have to remember, film was primitive then, comedy filmmaking. Very new territory. His first film, Making a Living. Well, reports say it was kind of an awkward start. But Chaplin just had this instinct for visual storytelling, didn't he? He figured out how to make his stage skills work on screen and fast.
Incredibly fast. It's quite remarkable. His second film, Kid Auto Races, at Venice, same year, 1914. That's where he first puts on the costume. The whole look, baggy pants, mustache, cane, bowler hat, the tramp. It wasn't just a character. It was like an instant icon was born right there on screen.
He really didn't mess around. Started directing his own films at Keystone, then moved to S&A. That's where the Tramp character starts getting more emotional depth, right, than Mutual. And all along, he's pushing for more artistic control, bigger paychecks, which was pretty bold for an actor back then. By 1918, he's one of the most famous, best-paid people on the planet. Then, 1919, he co-founds United Artists with Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, D.W. Griffith. This gives him complete control over his movies. That's just years ahead of its time. He wasn't just making comedies. Sources say he brought a new level of artistry to silent film. He elevated it, making it about social issues, emotions. But how did he actually do that on set? What was his process like?
Yeah, that's really key. He didn't just do slapstick. He, perfected it. He showed a fall could be funny, sure, but also maybe say something about being human, vulnerable. He basically took that raw vaudeville energy and mixed it with, the depth you'd find in a novel. He created cinema's first really complex character that everyone understood, no matter the language. It involved incredible precision, but also filling every little gesture, every tip of the hat with meaning.
So it's that emotional layer within the comedy that made it universal. Okay, that's where it gets really interesting for me. He wasn't just acting, he was basically inventing the language of film as he went.
Exactly. His methods were intense. People called it sheer perseverance to the point of madness. He'd apparently shoot thousands of feet of film, spend days just to get one little bit perfect. Total control. He'd act out all the parts for his cast, meticulous editing. He did it all. He aimed for this thing he called the illusion of the first time acting, making it look completely spontaneous to you, the audience, even though it was rehearsed like crazy. That's why if you watch his films with the sound off, you still feel this rhythm, this internal music. It's all choreographed. Apparently, he often filmed with live music playing on set. It creates this sort of invisible connection with you, using gestures to show deep emotion, complex humor. Pure genius, really. It bypasses language.
And as he got that control, he started making longer films, features, which was kind of against the grain then, wasn't it? Comedy was mostly shorts, but audiences loved it. The Kid in 1921, his first full feature, it mixes comedy and drama, deals with poverty, losing a child, stuff straight from his own childhood, clearly.
He was famously skeptical about talkies when sound came in, really believed they lacked the artistry of silent film. He worried dialogue would, limit the Tramp's global appeal. And holding on to that belief, even as sound took over Hollywood, led to maybe one of his greatest achievements.
Right, City Lights, 1931. Deep into the sound era, and he makes a silent film, but with his own musical score, which is beautiful. It's all about dignity, compassion. Just considered one of his absolute masterpieces.
But then you get Modern Times in 1936.
And this one.
And this is different. It was a direct satire, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Taking out industrialization, machine age, how it was, kind of dehumanizing people.
Yeah. Modern Times really showed his worries about labor in America, about capitalism, about machines taking jobs, especially during the Great Depression, which was hitting hard then. The film kind of argues that society's the problem, not the individual. You see how authority figures exploit workers, how efficiency trumps humanity. There's that famous image of workers like sheep, the assembly line literally eating him. It's pretty biting commentary on how capitalism could just grind people down. How risky was it, though, to be that critical back then?
Oh, it was a huge risk.
Ooh.
Definitely. The political climate, the economic anxiety, putting that on screen was bold. But what makes it so Chaplin, I guess, is that even with all that darkness, it ends on this note of hope. The Tramp finds happiness in connection, in love for another person. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Have things changed that much? Does that message still hit home for you today?
It really does. So he wasn't just trying to entertain you. He was using his art to make you ask big questions about the world you live in. Is that kind of why Modern Times still feels so sharp, so relevant?
I think so. Absolutely. It's more than just a movie. It's like this timeless prompt for self-reflection. It asks us, the audience, to keep looking at our own society, our values, the systems we operate in.
Now, switching gears a bit. Beyond the art, his private life was, well, complicated. One source called it darkly flawed and definitely caused scandals. Those controversial marriages to very young women. Mildred Harris was 16, he was 29. They had a son who died very young, tragically. Then Lita Gray, also 16 when he was 35. That one could have apparently led to statutory rape charges in California. And then the Joan Barry paternity suit, very public. Blood tests showed he wasn't the father, but that evidence wasn't allowed in court then. So he was declared the father, had to pay support. The media, reportedly influenced by the FBI, really went after him and damaged his reputation quite a bit. Given his genius and fame, why do you think his personal life was so tumultuous, especially those relationships? Was it the fame, his difficult past?
That's a really tough question, isn't it? It's one of the central paradoxes. Many biographers look back at that childhood trauma, no real father figure, his mother's instability, and see how it might have shaped his adult relationships, maybe seeking control or maybe repeating patterns he knew. It's hard to say for sure. But that paternity case, yeah, especially with the FBI getting involved, it shows how public opinion,
That's
particularly
right.
back then, could just crush someone regardless of the facts.
And yet, his last marriage to Ona O'Neill, she was 18, he was 54, so that caused controversy too, but he called it perfect love. They had 8 kids, stayed together until his death, so maybe he did find some peace eventually.
It seems that way, yes. A real contrast to the earlier storms. But alongside these personal issues, his politics really started to heat things up too. He was deeply troubled by the rise of militarism and nationalism in the 1930s, and he got much more outspoken. The Great Dictator in 1940, that was incredibly bold, directly mocking Hitler, attacking fascism, playing both the Jewish barber and the dictator Hinkle. And that final speech, pleading for peace, humanity,
Yeah.
it caused a huge stir and actually hurt his popularity in the U.S.
And then during World War II, his support for the Soviet Union as an ally, his associations with people suspected of being communists, that really put a target on his back. He always denied being a communist, insisted he was a peacemonger, but he definitely pushed back against government suppression of ideas, against UGAK, the House Un-American Activities Committee. He wouldn't compromise his beliefs.
No, he wouldn't. And his next film, Monsieur Verdoux in 1947, reflected that defiance. It's a black comedy. He plays a serial killer. but he uses it to criticize capitalism, to argue war itself is mass murder sanctioned by society. That film bombed in the U.S. The public backlash against his politics was intense. The FBI opened an official investigation, built up this enormous file on him, like 1,900 pages. A congressman, John Rankin, was even calling for him to be deported. The pressure just kept building. And it all came to a head in 1952. He was sailing to London for the Limelight premiere, a very personal film about his London youth. While he was at sea, the U.S. Attorney General canceled his re-entry permit. Said he'd have to submit to an interview about his politics and his morals to even be considered for re-entry.
Wow. And he just refused. He basically said, fine, I'm done. He cut his ties with the U.S., didn't he? Ended his Hollywood career right there. Settled with Una and the family in Switzerland. Didn't come back for 20 years. And Limelight, that film he was promoting, got boycotted across America. It really shows you the intense pressure cooker he was and his strong beliefs clashing with the anxieties of the Cold War era.
It's a powerful example of that tension between artistic freedom and political fear, isn't it? His refusal to bend, even facing exile, really cemented his legacy not just as a filmmaker, but as someone who stood for something. It makes you think, how does a society navigate that? How do you balance allowing artists to speak freely, especially during times of conflict with national security concerns or political anxieties? His choice speaks volumes.
So from 1953 onwards, he's living in Switzerland. He still makes films, though. King in New York in 57, which took some direct shots at HUAC and American consumerism. And his last one, A Countess from Hong Kong in 1967.
Yeah, and eventually the political mood in the U.S. started shifting. People began looking at his films again, appreciating his artistry, and then came 1972. He returned to the U.S. just that once after 2 decades away. It was to accept an honorary Oscar. The reception was apparently overwhelming. He got this incredibly long-standing ovation. He was treated like a hero returning home.
He got a lot of recognition later in life, knighted by the Queen in 1975, honorary degrees from Oxford and Durham, the Erasmus Prize. Even after he died in 1977, there was that bizarre incident in 78 where his body was actually stolen and held for ransom, which, given his sense of humor, maybe he would have found some dark comedy in that. The perpetrators were apparently immigrants down on their luck. But looking back at it all, despite the controversies, the exile, his impact is just massive, isn't it?
Undeniable. He's truly seen as a giant of the 20th century, one of cinema's very first artists. He fundamentally changed how movies looked, what they could say. He took comedy feature films mainstream, blended slapstick with real emotion, pathos, and the Tramp. That image is just universal, a symbol of resilience, of humanity, even if you've never actually sat down and watched one of his films.
The list of people he influenced is huge. Filmmakers like Fellini, Tati, Truffaut, Scorsese, even animation like Felix the Cat and Mickey Mouse owe something to him, daddyism, and even in law. That 1928 case, Chaplin v. Amador, set a legal precedent protecting a performer's unique style, their persona, from being unfairly copied. That still matters today.
It all comes back to how his work just keeps resonating, doesn't it? It still pushes you, the audience, to question things, to think about society, but also, like modern times reminds us at the end, to smile at every dawn, to find that hope.
So we've walked through quite a journey today, from London poverty to global fame, his filmmaking genius, the social commentary, those personal and political battles. His films, they make you laugh, they make you cry sometimes. They really capture that paradox of being human, right? How comedy and tragedy are intertwined, how people find ways to keep going, even when things seem hopeless.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, maybe think about this. In our world today, with all our challenges, technological change, inequality, political divides, what's the big takeaway from Chaplin's Tramp for you? How does that little fellow with his determined walk and that flicker of optimism still connect with your own life? And maybe remind us that laughter and empathy are still some of the best tools we have.